inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. At the SpaceX Mission Control Room in Hawthorne, California, the SpaceX flight controllers are reporting that all of Freedom's systems are in excellent shape. Nick Hague there, as you see on your screen, stowing some last-minute items aboard the Dragon spacecraft that he is commanding from undocking through splashdown. The weather has been monitored for the splashdown sites in the Gulf of America throughout the day. The reports continue to be that the weather is forecast to be excellent for Dragon's homecoming on Tuesday afternoon. From the time of undocking through splashdown, it's a fairly short phasing, as they term the ballistics end of the operation, about 17 hours of transit between the time the Dragon will undock from the International Space Station and the time it will splash down. Again, splashdown off the coast of Florida in the Gulf is scheduled for 4:57 p.m. Central Time, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday afternoon. We should be seeing Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore shortly. At the time of splashdown, predicted to be Tuesday afternoon, Williams again will have logged 286 days in space on this, her third flight, and a total of 608 days in space, the second most by any American astronaut, right behind Peggy Whitson, who has 675 days in space on her bio. Butch Wilmore, with his 286 days in space at the time of splashdown tomorrow, on this, his third flight, will have logged 464 days in space. Nick Hague, wrapping up his third mission with 171 days in space, will have a total of 374 days in space, to his credit. And again, Aleksandr Gorbunov of Roscosmos ending his first flight into space with a splashdown tomorrow and a total of 171 days on his biography. We are moving into a brief handover between satellites on the Tracking and Data Relay Satellite System. There you see a view of us here in Mission Control in Houston at the Johnson Space Center in the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Once again, the flight director in charge of tonight's operation is Marcos Flores, the lead flight director for Crew-9, joined on console by spacecraft communicator Tess Caswell, whose voice you will hear talking to the crew periodically during the time frame between now and hatch closure, and then between hatch closure and undocking, through the time that the Freedom spacecraft leaves what is called the approach ellipsoid. Basically, I term it the neighborhood of the International Space Station, at which point integrated operations between the Johnson Space Center and Hawthorne will come to an end, and it will all be in Hawthorne's hands to bring the crew home.
SpaceX copies LIO unsealed at 0258 Zulu. Continue with IMV duct teardown and hatch closure.
And Freedom Houston on the big loop. Sounded like a good comm check with SpaceX. At your convenience, we'll take a comm check with us.
And Houston, Freedom's gets it loud and clear.
Copy.
With those voice checks between Nick Hague and the SpaceX Mission Control Room in Hawthorne and the Flight Control Room here in Houston, you're seeing Don Pettit and Alexei Ovchinin taking photographs of Butch Wilmore in his entry suit. Suni Williams is in the foreground near the hatchway. Once again, there are two SpaceX Dragons at the International Space Station. The one that the Crew-9 crew will be departing in a couple of hours from now is on the zenith or space-facing port of the Harmony module. The newly arrived Crew-10 crew docked early Sunday morning to the forward port of Harmony in their Dragon Endurance. And you see at the hatchway the 4 departing Crew-9 crew members posing for some final photos. Final handshakes and hugs between the departing Crew-9 crew members and the crew members who will remain on board the International Space Station, maintaining a continuous human presence on the orbital laboratory that began on November 2nd, 2000. Once again, we're in a brief handover between satellites that provide the downlink TV capability from the station. We'll be regaining that downlink TV just a moment or two from now. You saw the Crew-9, two of the Crew-9 crew members, Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore, already in their entry suits. Nick Hague and Aleksandr Gorbunov will don their suits once inside Dragon. Hague and Gorbunov flew up to the International Space Station back on September 28th. So they're wrapping up a mission almost 6 months in duration. Williams and Wilmore, of course, with their extended mission in the home stretch of a 9.5-month flight spanning 121.3 million statute miles. And now inside Dragon, you see Butch Wilmore on the far left. In the center of your screen, Aleksandr Gorbunov. Nick Hague on the far right. They will settle into their respective seats aboard Freedom as countdown clocks here in Mission Control are ticking backward toward the time of the command to initiate the opening of hooks holding Freedom to its docking port on the space-facing side of the Harmony module. That command to be issued about an hour and 55 minutes from now. The actual physical separation, what we peg as undocking for the history books, is scheduled at 12:05 a.m. Central, 1:05 a.m. Eastern.
SpaceX copies on hatch closure. We'll send a command momentarily to transition the state machine to hatch closed. You can reference your hatch closed event details for a few actions and then complete suit donning per procedure 4.010.
Freedom copies all.
And Nick Hague aboard Freedom confirming that Dragon's hatch to the International Space Station is closed. That call coming at 10:05 p.m. Central Time, 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time. So the Crew-9 crew now safely aboard the Dragon Freedom will complete their suit-up procedures, do systems checks. There will be a series of leak checks between Freedom and the International Space Station at the docking interface. You see Suni Williams on the far right-hand side of your screen. She will be seated next to Nick Hague, the Freedom commander. To Hague's right will be Aleksandr Gorbunov, and you see Butch Wilmore on the far left. The undocking between Freedom and the International Space Station will take Freedom above and behind the orbital laboratory through a series of what are known as departure burns. Freedom then will swing below the space station on a trajectory for the deorbit burn, a 7-minute, 29-second braking maneuver that is scheduled at 4:11 p.m. Central Time on Tuesday afternoon, 5:11 p.m. Eastern Time. That will slow Dragon down by more than 50 meters per second, allowing it to drop out of orbit for its high-speed entry back into the Earth's atmosphere and a parachute-assisted splashdown off the coast of Florida. Once again, the 4 Dragon Freedom crew members you see in this view. Butch Wilmore on the far left, Aleksandr Gorbunov with his back to the camera, Nick Hague just out of the field of view, and Suni Williams on the far right of your screen. The hatch was closed at 10:05 p.m. Central Time, 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time. The station hatch will be closed just a short time from now, enabling a series of leak checks to occur to make sure we have an airtight seal before the pressurization of pressurized mating adapter number 2 can begin. The vestibule will be depressed to vacuum, setting the stage for the initiation of the commanding of the opening of the hooks holding Dragon in place and the physical separation of Dragon from Harmony, with undocking scheduled at 12:05 a.m. Central Time, 1:05 a.m. Eastern Time. If you're just joining us, you're looking live inside the SpaceX Dragon Freedom. The Crew-9 crew all on board. On the far left, Butch Wilmore. On the far right, Suni Williams, who launched back on June 5th aboard a Boeing Starliner spacecraft, returning on Tuesday aboard the Dragon Freedom to complete what will be 286 days in space, 285 of which will have been spent on the International Space Station. Just to put their long-duration mission into context, it is not the longest mission in the history of U.S. spaceflight, the longest single mission. That distinction belongs to NASA's Frank Rubio, who had his mission extended due to a coolant leak on the Soyuz spacecraft that he was launched on from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. A replacement Soyuz was launched by Roscosmos. Rubio came home subsequent to that with a total of 371 days in space. Behind him, Mark Vande Hei, NASA astronaut, logged 355 days in space. Scott Kelly, 340. Christina Cook, 328. And Peggy Whitson, 289. On the far left of your screen, a good view of Dragon with its open nose cap. That nose cone will be closed following Tuesday's deorbit burn as part of the pre-entry procedures. Once again, moving into a quick handover here between satellites on our tracking and data relay satellite system. The Dragon crew all on board. The hatch is closed between Dragon and the International Space Station. The station hatch will be closed a short time from now, and leak checks at the docking interface between the two spacecraft will begin to make sure we have an airtight seal before the small passageway or vestibule, known as pressurized mating adapter number 2, will be ready for depressurization down to vacuum, and the subsequent undocking of Dragon from Harmony's space-facing port about an hour and 47 minutes from now. Looking once again inside Dragon, Butch Wilmore on the left. Settling into his seat is the commander of Dragon, veteran NASA astronaut Nick Hague. On the far right of your screen, Suni Williams Roscosmos cosmonaut Aleksandr Gorbunov is completing a few adjustments to items with his seat. He will don his entry suit just a few moments from now, and all 4 crew members will be positioned, ready for undocking and the beginning of a 17-hour trip back to Earth and a conclusion to this mission. As mentioned earlier, this is not the first